What's up, Ita Gang? Welcome into Dapp Central, your home for everything blockchain and crypto. I'm your host here for Reed. As a part of this brief update, we're diving into governance and the fact that the community has spoken and the Intersect MBO has heard us loud and clear. Now, to set the stage, about a month or so ago, we saw the Cardano annual budget being released by the Intersect Budget Committee. It was aiming to take out roughly around 10 to 15% of the existing Cardano Treasury, which is valued at roughly 1.5 billion ADA. Now, some people agreed with the proposed budget. Of course, some people did not. But there's been a recent article that I want to dive into as a part of today's brief update, talking about the restructuring and the fact that their budget committee has heard the community loud and clear. Now, this is going to make a couple of key changes and really give a lot of the power back to the D-reps, which is where it should be. Now, before we go any further diving into all of these great details, if it's your first time stopping by the channel, my goal is to help you find your footing within the Cardano and Bitcoin ecosystems. If you appreciate content like this, I would appreciate you if you could smash that thumbs up on the way in. It's by far one of the easiest ways to support me as a content creator. If you want more, consider subscribing to the channel. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to go ahead and leave those down below. If you want to extend your support for the channel even further, consider delegating with either of the two Dapp Central stake pools, which both share the ticker DAPP. Without any further ado, let's jump on in here. And as always, I'll leave the links to the content that we review down below. So it states here, and this was released on March 7th, recalibrating Cardano's budget process. We've heard you loud and clear. So based on community feedback, the Intersect budget team or the Intersect committee is continuing and will make necessary adjustments, including the following. Number one, gaining consensus on Cardano's product funding priorities via the product roadmap. Now, I'm going to have to dive into this in a separate video, but there is a fully dedicated 2025 vision and roadmap for Cardano. Again, just for the sake of time here, there is the mention on scaling. There's also talks here about incoming liquidity, layer 2 or L2 expansion, improving the developer and the user experience, as well as focusing on programmable assets, multiple node implementations, making Cardano that much of a shinier object for anybody who wants to operate a node or stake pool. And then last, we've got SPO incentives or stake pool operator incentives. So the Intersect Budget Committee wants to make sure that number one, their goal or their budget focuses and hits on all those key points. Now, what's interesting is that the proposed roadmap that I just highlighted is in fact an actual InfoGov action. So it's not technically the Cardano roadmap for 2025, but there is an ongoing governance action to make it the Cardano roadmap for this particular year. Next, the team from Intersect will be having open calls for proposals from anyone seeking Treasury funding or projects or programs. So this sounds to me like it's going to be very similar to Project Catalyst, where proposals can be made by anybody within the community, particularly projects or vendors that have a service to offer. And then given the structure of Intersect and the DREP and just the governance model that we have, we'll be able to weigh in as a community as to whether or not we agree that those particular proposals should get funding or not. In closing, the Cardano community via DREPs will now also be pivoting towards making the final determination about which proposals are included in the budget or the budgets. In addition, the community through DREPs and the Constitutional Committee remains the ultimate decision maker on how and when Treasury funds will be allocated. Intersect's role, for anybody who isn't aware, is to provide support, to advise, and to provide administrative oversight, ensuring the process is structured, fair, and aligned with community priorities. Now, there's a couple of things here which have been instrumental, which the team will continue to focus on. And number one, that's to strengthen the respect for the DREP authority when it comes to on-chain governance and the principles. Also, to ensure a more direct community role in the budget approvals And then another key point that I highlighted here is the fact that they want to leverage Cardano's technology, including smart contracts and distributed oversight, to set a strong precedent for transparent governance. Now, there's, I believe, the Cerberus team and the Sunday Labs team, which are now working on a smart contract to simplify the oversight and just how things are approved when it comes to withdrawals around the Cardano Treasury. With all of those changes or potential changes coming down the pipes, there's now been a revised approach which should hopefully more closely adhere to the Cardano Constitution. One of those is with how providers can now be selected or provide input to be selected in order to execute on different parts of the Cardano budget or the annual vision. And so it states here that ecosystem builders and the broader community will now and can now submit proposals directly alongside committee budgets being submitted as block budgets. In terms of fund management, the revised process will also include changes to how approved funding with Intersect listed as the administrator will be dispersed. Now, if I'm not mistaken, and all I currently know is the annual budget that's been worked on by Intersect, meaning that as it currently stands, they'll be sort of the sole distributor, but they want to make sure to have checks and balances as to how funds are distributed and to make sure that that's done extremely transparently. So in closing of that particular piece, it states, more importantly, it provides far greater transparency with fund disbursement, with the community able to self-audit. And this is where Sunday Labs and Cerberus comes in. So they're both developing a smart contract, which is a multi-sig smart contract, meaning that multiple parties have to agree before anything actually happens. And this will allow for, and this will also establish multiple organizations to chip in, but the smart contract will serve as an oversight control mechanism with the ability to pause payments to vendors for just cause, such as contract breaches. Now, in closing, there's also a mention here of the NCL, or the net change limit, which I've covered in a separate video, but essentially what this is the amount that we can pull out from the Treasury in a given year. So a critical factor in the budget discussions is the NCL, a constitutional mechanism determining how much ADA can be withdrawn from the Treasury within a particular period. As it stands, the community is currently evaluating two possible approaches: a percentage-based limit or a fixed numeric cap. Now, as the conversation continues, if you're an ADA holder or a DREP, what can you do? Well, DREPs can currently decide which projects and vendors will get funded. In April, the Cardano community will be able to review submitted and committee proposed proposals, and they'll also be able to signal proposal preferences, very similar to, oh my goodness, what is the name? Project Catalyst. In parallel, the NCL will now also require approval. So not only will the community have to decide on the NCL, but they're also going to have to decide on which proposals they want to actually see included in the annual budget. Now, once the DREPs refine their shortlist, that'll be submitted in a budget info action for on-chain approval. And you can always rely on the Intersect committees for subject matter insights, such as technical feasibility, duplication of any prior work or proposals, as well as gaps. And of course, the final decision rests with the community. So having said all of that, if you are a vendor or an ecosystem builder, obviously get your proposals ready. You'll be able to submit that. Submissions open up in early March. And if you are selected, funding will be managed by that multi-sig smart contract that I mentioned earlier, being developed by Sunday Labs and the Cerberus team. So as we get ready to close out this particular update and we just briefly shift into another thing that I want to mention, we have in early March the proposal submission process. So that's currently right now we're in the month of March. In the month of May, we're going to see submissions, which will then be organized, made public, and reviewed by the community and DREPs. And then in proposal, there's going to be that talk about the NCL, or the net change limit. And then when we're looking at April and May, we've got the DREPs who'll be able to finally signal or decide on which preferred vendors they'd like to see included or being funded as a part of the annual budget. And then in May/June, we're going to see the reconciliation efforts, where it's anticipated that relevant governance actions will be raised and any follow-up work will be organized if we have any unresolved funding requests. So I believe that will do it there. Again, there's been a lot of changes, but glad to see that the Intersect MBO has listened to the community and that they're willing to pivot given their current effort. Now, if you want to get involved here with governance on Cardano, I always mention this, head over to gov.tools. I am not a DREP, but here you can decide as to whether or not you want to sign up to be a DREP. You can sign up and delegate your ADA to an existing DREP, or if you want to just abstain from participating in any of this, you've got the ability to do that here as well. You can also view proposals. You can also review some of the different FAQs and guides they have listed here too. Jumping over into ADA stat, you've got some of the actual ongoing governance actions. So right now I'm currently looking at the last or one of the more recent submitted actions, which was to decrease the Treasury tax from 20% to 10%. It looks like this won't currently pass given how much time is left. We've got roughly 5 days left and there's only 21% buy-in from the DREPs. We need 67%. And then looking here at the left-hand side there, we need 66% from the ICC. And we've only got one person stating that this is actually constitutional. We've got 2 no's, one of them from the Cardano Foundation, and then we've got Emergo aiming to abstain. So there's a lot of hurdles here about this particular action. I don't think it's going to happen. But then as we get ready to close out here, and again, I'll probably have to cover this in a separate video, we have the Cardano Vision and Roadmap for 2025, which was just submitted as an info action on the 28th of February, and this actually expires at the end of March. So as it currently stands, we've already got 27% buy-in and no mention here yet from the ICC members. That will do it here for today's brief update. Hopefully you guys have found this to be helpful. As always, if you have, please smash that thumbs up on the way out. If you want more, consider subscribing. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to voice off down below. That said, and as always, I'll see you guys in the next video.